Before we begin, please be aware that this story delves into themes of isolation, psychological suspense, and the unsettling nature of the unknown. Listener discretion is advised. Imagine this: you're driving alone hundreds of miles from home, the hum of the highway your only companion. The world outside blurs into a monotonous rhythm of asphalt and sky. Then a voice, calm and synthetic, breaks the silence. Your GPS tells you to turn, not onto a familiar exit, not onto a well-lit street, but onto nothing. An overgrown dirt track, barely visible, leading into a dense, silent expanse of trees where no road should be. Every fiber of your being screams, "No!" But the voice insists. Turn left in 500 feet. And then, turn left now. What happens when the technology you trust implicitly, the system designed to guide you, decides to lead you somewhere that simply doesn't exist on any map you've ever seen? What happens when it takes you to a place meticulously erased from the world, a place that shouldn't be reachable? For Michael, that question wasn't a hypothetical one. It became his terrifying reality on a Tuesday afternoon, somewhere deep in the heartland of America. Michael was a creature of comfort and predictability. 32 years old, a graphic designer by trade, he thrived on order. His life was a series of carefully planned steps, from his morning coffee ritual to the pixel-perfect precision of his latest digital masterpiece. He was moving from the bustling streets of Boston to a promising new job in Denver, a cross-country trek that was, for him, an adventure entirely reliant on meticulous planning and cutting-edge technology. His new Ford Explorer, a gleaming monument to modern engineering, was his sanctuary for the journey. Its integrated SYNC navigation system, with its crisp display and calm, reassuring female voice, was his trusted co-pilot, guiding him through thousands of miles of unfamiliar terrain. The first few days had been flawless. He'd cruised through upstate New York, across Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, then into the vast, unfolding landscapes of Missouri and Kansas. Each state line was a milestone, each gas station a brief respite, each hotel a predictable haven. The GPS had been a constant, unwavering presence, a digital tether to civilization. He'd grown accustomed to its gentle directives, its confident pronouncements of upcoming turns and estimated arrival times. He trusted it implicitly. Why wouldn't he? It was the pinnacle of modern navigation, constantly updated, satellite-locked, infallible. It was somewhere in eastern Colorado, the land flattening out into an endless canvas of amber fields and distant, hazy horizons, that the first tremor of unease rippled through Michael. He'd been driving for hours, the monotonous drone of the highway almost hypnotic. The sun, a relentless disk in the cerulean sky, cast long, distorted shadows from the occasional telephone pole. He was making good time, just a few more hours until his planned stop in Limon. Then the voice spoke. "In 1 mile, turn right." Michael glanced at the screen. The highlighted route showed a sharp right turn off I-70. He frowned. He didn't remember seeing any major exits coming up on his paper map, which he still carried as a quaint backup, nor on his phone's Google Maps, which he'd periodically cross-referenced in busier areas. But the SYNC system was usually more precise. Perhaps it was a new bypass, or a shortcut he hadn't noticed. He shrugged it off. Technology moves fast. Turn right in half a mile. He scanned the horizon. There was an exit sign, barely visible through the shimmering heat haze. It was small, faded, and pointed to a county road, or 234, that he'd never heard of. No gas station, no diner, just a narrow asphalt strip disappearing into a sparse grove of scraggly trees. Turn right now. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, his foot hovering over the brake. This didn't feel right. But the GPS was insistent, the arrow on the screen firmly pointing down the obscure road. He'd committed to trusting the system. With a slight jolt, he steered the Explorer off the interstate, the tires crunching softly as he left the smooth asphalt of I-70 behind. Immediately, the world changed. The smooth hum of the highway was replaced by the softer thrum of tires on rougher pavement. The wide-open sky seemed to press down more closely, the trees closing in on either side. The road was narrower than he expected, almost a single lane in places, and the asphalt was cracked, patched, and crumbling. He hadn't seen another car since he turned off the main road. The silence was profound, broken only by the wind whistling through the dry grass and the distant cry of an unseen bird. Continue straight for 2.7 miles. Michael gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. He felt a prickle of discomfort, a nascent unease blooming in his chest. This wasn't a shortcut. It felt like a detour into oblivion. He checked his phone. No signal bars. He swore under his breath. He should have known better than to trust a rural county road for a shortcut. But why would the SYNC system, usually so reliable, direct him here? 2.7 miles passed slowly. The road deteriorated further, the asphalt giving way to a heavily graveled surface, then eventually to a rough, packed dirt track. Dust billowed behind the explorer, a hazy cloud in the rearview mirror. The trees grew denser, a wall of green and brown that blocked out the late afternoon sun. He hadn't seen a single house, a mailbox, or any sign of human habitation. Michael's anxiety ratcheted up a notch. This was not progress. This was wrong. In 800 feet, turn left. Michael squinted through the windshield. Left? There was no road. Just a dense thicket of thorny bushes and gnarled trees. The dirt track he was on seemed to curve gently to the right. He slowed to a crawl, his heart beginning to thump an uneven rhythm against his ribs. Turn left in 300 feet. He leaned forward, straining to see. And then he saw it. Barely. A faint indentation in the undergrowth, a narrow gap between two ancient, twisted oaks, almost entirely swallowed by weeds and thorny vines. It looked less like a road and more like an animal trail, a forgotten scar on the landscape. Turn left now. The voice was calm, utterly devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the growing panic seizing Michael. He slammed on the brakes. No, he muttered aloud, his voice sounding thin and weak in the sudden silence of the car. No way. That's not a road. He stared at the screen. The bright blue arrow still pointed decisively down that impossible path. The map display, usually showing surrounding roads and landmarks, now just showed his current position and a single thin blue line leading into the green abyss. There were no other roads, no towns, no features of any kind displayed in the surrounding area. It was a blank canvas save for his route. He tried to override it. He tapped the screen trying to find an alternative route, or zoom out to see where he was in relation to the main highway. The screen was unresponsive. The map was frozen, displaying only this single illogical path. He tried to cancel the navigation. Nothing. The system was locked onto this one impossible destination. A cold dread began to seep into Michael's bones. He felt a dizzying sense of disorientation. This wasn't a glitch. This felt intentional. He glanced at his phone again. Still no signal. He was truly alone. His mind raced. He could turn around, backtrack to I-70. That was the logical choice, the safe choice. But something held him. A perverse curiosity, perhaps, or the stubborn, ingrained trust in the technology he had invested so much in. What if it was a road? What if it led to some hidden, beautiful place? A national park access road or a secluded lake that somehow wasn't on standard maps? His adventurous side, usually dormant, stirred. After all, he was on a cross-country adventure, and the GPS had never steered him wrong before. Not really. He took a deep breath, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He shifted into drive, his foot trembling slightly on the accelerator. Slowly, carefully, he turned the Explorer's front wheels towards the overgrown path. The thorny branches scraped loudly against the paintwork, a harsh, grating sound that made him wince. The tires churned up dry earth and torn vegetation. The vehicle lurched and bumped over unseen obstacles, the suspension groaning in protest. He was committed now. He was on the path, the impossible path, that his GPS insisted was the way forward. The screen, still frozen on its singular route, now showed a destination marker, a tiny red pin, deep within the green unknown. A place that, by all logic, did not exist. Place not on the map. And he was being led straight into its heart. The red pin pulsed, an impossible beacon on an impossible map, deep within a vast, verdant expanse that the world had seemingly forgotten to chart. Michael stared, unblinking, his foot still hovering over the accelerator. His mind, usually a fortress of logic and data, reeled. The absurdity of it was a physical punch. A place not on the map? It was a child's fantasy, a campfire tale, not a real-world navigation issue. He scoffed, a dry, humorless sound that died in the sudden silence of the cabin. "All right, old friend," he muttered, tapping the screen of the GPS unit. "Time to snap out of it." He pressed the menu button, then recalculate route. Nothing. The screen remained stubbornly fixed, the red pin mocking him from the digital wilderness. He tried to zoom out to get a larger perspective to prove to himself that this was just a glitch, a momentary software hiccup. But the zoom function was frozen too. The scale remained tight, focused only on this immediate, inexplicable journey. He pulled his phone from his pocket, the familiar weight a small comfort. No signal, not even a single bar. He held it up, angled it towards the windshield, then out the side window, desperate for any flicker of connectivity. Nothing. A dead zone. The kind of place you only found deep in national parks or forgotten corners of the desert. But he wasn't in the desert, and the nearest national park was hundreds of miles away. He was just on a road in rural Pennsylvania, or so he thought. A shiver traced its way down his spine, a cold premonition that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He could turn back. It was the sensible thing to do, the logical, rational choice. He could simply make a U-turn, find his way back to the main highway, and dismiss this entire surreal experience as a bizarre technological malfunction, perhaps a solar flare messing with his GPS satellites. He could even laugh about it later, over a beer with David, telling him about the time his usually reliable mapping system tried to send him to Narnia. But something held him there. A prickle of curiosity, sharper than any fear, began to needle at him. Michael had always been a man who sought answers, who delved into data anomalies, who couldn't leave a puzzle unsolved. This wasn't just an anomaly. It was a fundamental contradiction to everything he understood about geography and technology. Place not on the map. The phrase echoed in his head, a siren song for the part of him that thrived on the unknown. He thought of his life, the predictable rhythm of his days, the spreadsheets, the meetings, the familiar routine. He loved his work, but lately a subtle ennui had begun to creep in, a yearning for something more, something unexpected. And here it was, staring him in the face, radiating from a small red pin on a cheap GPS screen. Just a little further, he rationalized, his voice barely a whisper. Just to see where this road goes. It has to connect to something eventually. This has to be an old logging road that just isn't properly charted. He ignored the part of his brain screaming that a road was one thing, but a destination pinpointed in the middle of nowhere, labeled as if it were a physical location, was entirely another. He shifted the car into drive. The engine hummed, a comforting, familiar sound that momentarily grounded him. The paved road, which had been perfectly serviceable moments ago, began to show signs of neglect almost immediately. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, giving way to potholes that jolted the car with jarring thumps. Soon the asphalt ended abruptly, replaced by a rough gravel track that crunched noisily under his tires. The trees on either side of the road grew denser, their branches intertwining overhead, forming a verdant tunnel that steadily dimmed the afternoon light. Sunlight, which had been bright and cheerful just a few minutes ago, now filtered through the leaves in fragmented, shifting patterns, creating an eerie, dappled gloom. The air grew cooler, heavier, carrying a damp, earthy scent of decaying leaves and unseen moss. The chirping of birds, which had been constant, faded into an unsettling silence. It was as if he had driven through an invisible barrier, leaving the natural world behind. He glanced at the GPS again. The route line, a thin blue ribbon, still led resolutely forward, a digital thread pulling him deeper into the encroaching wilderness. The distance to the destination hadn't changed much, still stubbornly showing 2.7 miles, then 2.6 miles. But the landscape outside his window was transforming with alarming speed, becoming wilder, more untamed than anything he'd ever seen in this part of the state. The gravel track became narrower, forcing him to slow down considerably. Bushes scraped against the sides of his car, leaving faint scratches on the paintwork. He saw trees with unusually thick, gnarled trunks, their bark a darker, more primitive shade of brown than the familiar oaks and maples he knew. Some of them had strange, almost alien-looking fungi sprouting from their bases, glowing faintly with an unnatural luminescence in the dim light. He'd never seen anything like them, and he'd spent enough weekends hiking to consider himself reasonably familiar with local flora. A growing sense of isolation began to press in on him. The silence was profound, broken only by the crunch of his tires and the low thrum of the engine. He strained his ears, listening for any sign of life, a bird, a squirrel, even the distant hum of another car. Nothing. It felt like the world had actively emptied itself around him, leaving him as the sole inhabitant of this forgotten corridor. He remembered a story his grandmother used to tell, about places where the veil between worlds was thin, where time didn't quite run right. He'd always dismissed it as fanciful folklore, the musings of an old woman, but now, driving deeper into this strange, silent forest, he felt a flicker of understanding, a creeping unease that bordered on dread. He tried his phone again just to be sure. Still no signal. He thought about calling Emily, his sister, who would undoubtedly tell him to turn around immediately, to not be so foolish, or Jessica, his ex-girlfriend, who would simply sigh and say, "Michael, why are you always looking for trouble?" He could almost hear their voices, a distant echo of the rational world he was rapidly leaving behind. The track ahead became even more rudimentary, less a road and more a faint indentation in the forest floor, barely wide enough for his SUV. Thick roots snaked across the path, forcing him to navigate around them carefully. Low-hanging branches slapped against the windshield, startling him. The GPS, however, remained unfazed, its blue line unwavering, guiding him through what now felt less like a path and more like a barely perceptible deer trail. His heart began to pound, a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. The initial curiosity had curdled into something else, a potent mix of fear and an almost magnetic compulsion. He felt like a leaf caught in an unseen current, being pulled irrevocably towards an unknown destination. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that he should stop. He should reverse, turn around, get out of here while he still could. But he couldn't. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random glitch. This felt deliberate, as if the GPS hadn't malfunctioned, but had been given a new, impossible directive. Felt like an invitation, a challenge. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white. The red pin on the screen seemed to glow with an intensified light, drawing his gaze, compelling him forward. He was now just over a mile away. The trees pressed in so tightly that the sky was almost entirely obscured, plunging the forest into a twilight gloom even though it was still mid-afternoon. He could barely see 20 feet ahead. He pressed on, the SUV lurching over unseen obstacles, the engine straining. He was past the point of no return, not just geographically but psychologically. He had committed. He was going to see this through, no matter how illogical, no matter how terrifying. He was going to find out what lay at the end of this impossible route, what kind of place existed that was not on the map. He was being led straight into its heart, and he was going. He was being led straight into its heart, and he was going. Michael didn't hesitate. The decision, once made, settled into him with a cold, heavy certainty. He felt a strange mix of exhilaration and dread, a primal pull that overrode all logic. The first thing he did was grab his phone, checking the signal. 3 bars for now. He sent a quick text to his friend, David. "Hey man, heading out on a spontaneous road trip. Don't worry if I'm off the grid for a bit. Just exploring." It was a lie, of course, a flimsy cover story, but it was all he could manage in the whirlwind of his resolve. He knew David would likely just shrug it off, knowing Michael's sometimes impulsive nature. Next, he meticulously packed his car. Not for a leisurely trip, but for survival. A full tank of gas was already a given. He grabbed a small duffel bag, stuffing it with a few changes of clothes, a thick jacket, a first aid kit, and a powerful flashlight. He added a multi-tool, a portable phone charger, a large bottle of water, and a handful of energy bars. He even remembered a compass, though he suspected it might be useless where the GPS was taking him. As he moved through his apartment gathering supplies, the silence felt amplified, the air thick with unspoken questions. Every item he packed felt like a tacit acknowledgement of the unknown dangers ahead, a silent prayer for safe passage. He looked at his reflection in the hallway mirror, a stranger staring back. His eyes, usually light and easygoing, were now dark with a fierce, almost manic determination. He took a deep breath, the air still tasting of fear and anticipation, and walked out the door, locking it behind him with a definitive click that echoed in the empty hallway. The engine roared to life, a familiar comfort in the face of the profoundly unfamiliar journey he was about to undertake. The GPS, still glowing with its impossible route, seemed to pulse with a silent invitation. Michael pulled out of his driveway, the tires crunching on the gravel, and turned onto the familiar street. The world outside his car window was ordinary, mundane. Neighbors' lights were on, a dog barked in the distance, a late-night jogger passed by. It all felt like a fragile illusion, a thin veneer over a reality he was about to puncture. The first hour was deceptively normal. He followed the GPS's directions onto the highway, then onto a state route, the kind of comfortable, predictable roads that crisscross America. Michael kept his speed steady, his hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white. His mind raced, replaying every bizarre detail. The phantom road, the flickering coordinates, the undeniable pull he felt towards this impossible destination. Was he crazy? Had stress finally broken something in him? Or was he on the verge of discovering something truly extraordinary, something that defied all understanding? The thought made a shiver run down his spine, a thrill mixed with a cold dread. As he drove, the familiar landmarks began to thin out. The sprawling suburban developments gave way to smaller towns, then isolated farmhouses, their lights like lonely beacons in the encroaching darkness. The roads became narrower, less maintained, the asphalt giving way to cracked pavement, then eventually to gravel. The GPS, however, remained unwavering, its voice calm and authoritative, guiding him with an almost chilling precision. "Turn left in 500 feet, it would say, and there, almost imperceptibly, would be a dirt track branching off into the dark woods, a path no sane person would ever consider a real road. Michael's cell signal, which had been gradually weakening, finally vanished entirely. He watched the bars drop to zero, a small cold knot forming in his stomach. He was truly alone now, cut off from the world he knew. No emergency calls, no quick search for answers, no contacting David if things went south. It was just him, his car, and the relentless silent guide on his dashboard. The isolation was palpable, a heavy cloak settling over him. The landscape grew wilder with every mile. The manicured fields and pastures were replaced by dense, untamed forest. Towering pines and ancient oaks loomed on either side of the track, their branches interweaving overhead, creating a tunnel of darkness that swallowed his headlights. The air grew colder, damp with the smell of pine needles and damp earth. The silence outside the car was profound, broken only by the crunch of his tires on the gravel and the hum of his engine. No crickets, no rustling leaves, no distant animal calls. Just an oppressive, unnatural quiet that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. He glanced at the GPS screen again. The glowing line, his path, was now a thin, almost invisible thread cutting through a blank expanse. There were no other roads, no towns, no topographical features marked. It was truly off the map, a void in the digital world. Yet, the voice continued, directing him with the same unwavering confidence. Continue straight for 2 miles. Bear right at the fork. Each instruction felt like a command, drawing him deeper into the unknown. Doubt began to gnaw at him, a persistent, insidious whisper. Asterisk, turn back, Michael. This is madness. You're driving into nothing, into danger. Asterisk, but another voice, louder, more insistent, pushed back. Asterisk, you've come this far. You have to see it through. What if this is real? What if you're on the cusp of something incredible? Asterisk, his curiosity, once a gentle prod, had transformed into an unyielding force, an obsession. He couldn't turn back, not now. The thought of abandoning this quest, of living with the unanswered questions, was more terrifying than anything he might encounter ahead. He remembered a story his grandfather used to tell, about hidden places, thin spots in the world where reality bent. Michael had always dismissed them as old wives' tales, charming but ultimately unbelievable. Now, driving into the heart of an impossible route, he wondered, was he approaching one of those thin spots? Was he about to step through a veil? Hours blurred into a timeless journey, the moon a sliver of silver, occasionally pierced through the dense canopy, casting eerie, shifting shadows that played tricks on his eyes. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made him jump. He found himself constantly checking his rearview mirror, half expecting to see phantom headlights following him, or some grotesque shape emerging from the darkness. His paranoia was a living thing, a cold hand squeezing his heart. At one point, the track seemed to disappear entirely, giving way to an overgrown path barely wide enough for his car. Branches scraped against the paint, leaving long ghostly streaks. He had to engage his four-wheel drive, the suspension groaning as he navigated over rocks and fallen logs. The GPS, unfazed, simply updated. Off-road navigation activated. It was surreal. His car, a standard SUV, was being guided through terrain that felt more suited to an ATV, and the device treated it as perfectly normal. He was deep in it now. The air felt heavy, charged with an almost electrical tension. The trees here were ancient, their trunks gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers. There was an unsettling silence, a complete absence of animal sounds. It was as if the forest itself held its breath. Then he noticed something strange about the light. Even with the moon obscured, there was a faint, almost imperceptible glow in the distance, a soft, diffuse light that seemed to emanate from nowhere. It wasn't the cold, electric glow of a distant town, nor the warm, flickering light of a campfire. It was something else entirely, an ethereal luminescence that seemed to bend the shadows rather than create them. It pulsed subtly, drawing his gaze, pulling him forward like a moth to a flame. The GPS chimed, breaking the heavy silence. Destination in 500 feet. Michael's heart hammered against his ribs. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his hands ached. He was here. He was truly here. He pushed through a final thicket of thorny bushes, the branches tearing at his windshield, and then the trees abruptly gave way. He found himself at the edge of a vast circular clearing. The faint otherworldly light he'd seen was stronger here, bathing the entire area in an eerie soft blue luminescence. It seemed to come from the very air itself, from the ground, from the smooth, dark rock formations that dotted the clearing. In the center, rising like a silent, impossible monolith, was something that defied all understanding. It was too regular, too symmetrical to be natural, yet too ancient, too weathered to be man-made. It pulsed with the same soft blue light, a low resonant thrum that Michael could feel in his bones. It was massive, made of a dark, obsidian-like material that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. There were no doors, no windows, no discernible features, just smooth, impossibly uniform surfaces that sloped upwards to a point that seemed to pierce the very sky. The GPS finally spoke, its calm, synthesized voice echoing in the profound silence of the clearing. "You have arrived at your destination." Michael stared, his breath caught in his throat. This place, this structure, this impossible glow. It was real. It was here. And it was nothing he could have ever imagined. His mind reeled, trying to process the sheer impossibility of what lay before him. He was standing on ground that shouldn't exist, looking at something that absolutely could not be. He felt a profound sense of awe, overshadowed by an even deeper dread. What was this place? Who built it? And what would happen now that he had found it? He killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, amplifying the low hum that vibrated from the structure. He could feel it in his teeth, a deep, resonant frequency that seemed to whisper promises and threats. He was completely exposed, completely vulnerable. He was at the doorstep of the impossible, and he had no idea what lay beyond that threshold. All he knew was that he had been led here, by a ghost route on a GPS, to a place that defied every map, every law of nature, every shred of human understanding. And now the true journey was about to begin. The cold, metallic tang of the air hit Michael first, sharp and immediate, pushing back the stale forest scent he'd grown accustomed to. He'd barely taken a single step across the threshold when the massive stone slab that had served as a door vanished. Not slammed shut, not slid away, but simply ceased to exist, folding back into the seamless, dark gray surface of the exterior wall as if it had never been there. The opening was gone. The forest, the setting sun, the world he knew, all of it was instantly, utterly erased. He was plunged into a twilight world. No natural light penetrated here. Instead, a soft, ethereal luminescence pulsed from the very walls themselves, a shifting gradient of deep indigo and pale silver. It wasn't bright enough to cast harsh shadows, but rather diffused, making everything appear strangely flat and dimensionless. The air was unnervingly still, heavy and silent. A silence so profound it felt like a physical pressure against his eardrums, broken only by the frantic beat of his own heart. He was in a corridor, stretching out before him into the gloom. The walls weren't stone or concrete or any material Michael recognized. They were smooth, almost organic, like polished obsidian that had been somehow grown into shape. They felt cool and slightly damp to the touch, and under his palm, he could detect a faint internal vibration, a low thrum that resonated deep within his bones. The floor beneath his worn hiking boots was equally smooth, a dark, reflective surface that seemed to drink the meager light. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at his throat. He spun around, desperate, searching for the vanished doorway. His fingers brushed against the smooth, unbroken surface where it should have been. Nothing. Just the same alien material, cool and unyielding. Trapped. He was undeniably trapped. "Hello." His voice, a raw, desperate croak, was swallowed instantly by the oppressive silence. It didn't echo. It simply died, absorbed by the strange pulsating walls. The lack of reverberation was unsettling, as if the space itself refused to carry sound. He took a shaky breath, trying to steady himself. His mind raced, scrambling for an explanation. A trick of light? Some kind of advanced camouflage? But his rational brain, usually so quick with answers, was failing him. Everything here defied logic, defied physics. This wasn't just hidden, it was impossible. His phone. He fumbled for it, pulling it from his pocket. The screen remained stubbornly, terrifyingly black. Dead. Of course. It had barely held a charge out in the woods, but now here it felt like an absolute certainty that it would be useless. No signal, no battery, no connection to anything outside this bizarre, impossible place. His flashlight, however, still worked. He clicked it on, its beam cutting a stark, yellow swath through the indigo-silver glow. The artificial light seemed harsh and out of place, doing little to dispel the pervasive sense of unreality. It merely highlighted the endless, curving corridor, which seemed to stretch on indefinitely. He started walking. What else could he do? Turning back was no longer an option. The only way was forward, deeper into the mystery, deeper into whatever impossible landscape lay beyond. Each step felt heavy, deliberate, echoing softly in the profound silence. He tried to focus on the sound of his own breathing, anything to anchor himself to reality. The corridor wasn't straight. It gently curved, then straightened, then curved again, but in a way that felt subtly wrong, almost non-Euclidean. He felt a faint, almost imperceptible shift in the air pressure, a subtle disorientation that made him question his balance. Was the floor sloping, or was it his mind playing tricks? Minutes bled into what felt like hours. His legs ached, but he couldn't stop. The sheer monotony of the endless, glowing walls began to chip away at his resolve, replacing fear with a creeping sense of madness. He found himself staring at the shifting light, trying to discern patterns, messages, anything that might give him a clue. Sometimes the indigo would deepen, and then the silver would flare like a slow, deliberate breath the structure was taking. He started talking to himself just to hear a voice, any voice. "This isn't real, Michael. Wake up. You fell asleep in the car, didn't you? This is a dream." But the coolness of the air on his skin, the ache in his muscles, the metallic taste in his mouth, it was all too real. A new sensation began to prickle at the back of his neck. The feeling of being watched. There was no visible source, no sound, no movement beyond the shifting wall light, but the sensation was undeniable. It wasn't a hostile feeling, not exactly, but an intense, scrutinizing awareness. Like an insect under a microscope, utterly exposed, utterly powerless. He picked up his pace, a desperate urge to find an end to this hallway, to escape the unseen gaze. His breath came in ragged gasps, his heart hammering against his ribs. He felt a profound, primal fear, not just of physical danger, but of the very fabric of reality unraveling around him. Then, just as despair threatened to overwhelm him, the corridor opened up. It wasn't a sudden dramatic reveal, but a gradual widening, the walls slowly receding until he found himself standing at the edge of a vast, cavernous chamber. His flashlight beam was swallowed by the sheer scale of the space. Here the light was different. A steady, ethereal green glow permeated everything, emanating from the ceiling, the floor, the very air itself. It cast long, wavering shadows that danced with his every movement. The chamber was enormous, dwarfing anything he could have imagined. Its ceiling arched high above, lost in the green mist, and the walls seemed to stretch away into infinity. But what immediately drew his eye, what commanded his entire attention, was the immense structure dominating the center of the space. It was a monolith, a colossal obsidian-like pillar, yet also crystalline, refracting and reflecting the green light in a bewildering kaleidoscope of shifting patterns. It was easily 50 feet tall, perhaps more, tapering slightly towards a point that disappeared into the green haze above. Its surface was impossibly smooth, yet as he drew closer, he saw that it was alive with intricate etchings. He approached cautiously, his boots making no sound on the smooth, cool floor. The air around the monolith hummed with a low, resonant frequency Michael felt in his teeth, in his chest, in the very marrow of his bones. It was a sound that didn't assault the ears but permeated the body, a deep, pervasive vibration that felt ancient and powerful. The etchings weren't symbols or pictures Michael recognized. They were lines, thousands upon thousands of them, intersecting, overlapping, forming a complex, bewildering network across the monolith's surface. They glowed faintly, a brighter, almost incandescent green against the darker, obsidian-like material. He traced one with his finger, feeling the subtle indentation, the impossible smoothness. Then his breath hitched. He saw it. Among the myriad alien pathways etched into the monolith, there was a single faint line that glowed with a slightly different intensity, a subtle pulse that drew his eye. He leaned in closer, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. It was a route, a path, and as his eyes followed its meandering course, his blood ran cold. It was the exact route his GPS had taken him on. The ghost route, the impossible road that led to the abandoned cabin, the forgotten sign, the hidden door. It was there, illuminated on the surface of this impossible, alien monolith, a tiny, glowing thread woven into a vast, terrifying tapestry of unknown destinations. This wasn't just a place not on the map. This monolith wasn't just in this place. It was the map, or perhaps the controller of the map. And what other routes did it control? What other impossible journeys were being charted and guided from this silent, emerald-lit abyss, deep beneath the earth, in a place that defied every shred of human understanding? The true journey had indeed begun, and Michael was now standing at its very heart, a single unwitting pawn in a game he couldn't even begin to comprehend. The air itself seemed to hum with an unearthly energy, a silent, vibrating thrum that resonated deep within Michael's bones. The light, a soft, pulsating azure, wasn't emanating from a single source, but appeared to be woven into the very fabric of the cavern walls, glowing from veins of an unknown mineral that snaked through the dark rock like phosphorescent arteries. It cast long, dancing shadows that stretched and contracted with each subtle shift in its intensity, making the vast space around him feel alive, breathing. Michael stood rooted to the spot, his breath catching in his throat, the metallic tang of fear sharp on his tongue. This wasn't a cave. This wasn't a hidden bunker. This was something else entirely, a place that screamed of ancient secrets and impossible physics. The ground beneath his feet was smooth, almost polished, a dark, obsidian-like rock that reflected the blue glow like a still subterranean lake. It felt unnaturally warm, a subtle heat that seeped through the soles of his boots, a stark contrast to the chilled air that clung to his skin. He squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them again, desperate to dispel the nightmare, but the impossible reality remained. The blue light, the vast echoing silence, the sheer mind-bending scale of it all. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the profound quiet. He was truly, utterly alone. His gaze fell to the GPS device still clutched in his hand. The screen, once a beacon of direction, now displayed a jumble of corrupted data, lines of static dancing across the display, dissolving the familiar map into an unrecognizable mess of pixels. The battery indicator, which had been full mere moments ago, was now flashing red, rapidly draining, as if the very energy of this place was actively devouring its power. With a final flicker, the screen went black. The device was dead, his last link to the world above severed. A wave of primal terror washed over him, threatening to engulf him in its cold embrace. He wanted to scream, to run back, to find the impossible passage that had brought him here, but the entrance, if it even was an entrance, was nowhere to be seen. The rock face seemed to have sealed itself behind him, leaving no trace of the opening he'd stumbled through. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed him whole, leaving him in this magnificent, terrifying void. Panic clawed at his throat, but a stubborn spark of defiance, a trait he'd inherited from his no-nonsense father, flickered to life within him. He hadn't survived a decade of navigating treacherous financial markets to succumb to a pretty light show in a cave. He took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing himself to focus, to analyze. This wasn't a place for panic. This was a place for observation. He scanned the cavern, slowly turning in a full circle, his eyes trying to pierce the shifting shadows at the periphery of the blue glow. The sheer walls stretched upwards, disappearing into the distant gloom, their surfaces mottled with the same glowing veins. There were no stalactites or stalagmites, no typical cave formations. Instead, the walls seemed unnaturally smooth in places, almost carved, hinting at an intelligence far beyond nature. As his eyes adjusted further, he began to notice subtle details. Along the base of one wall, where the polished floor met the glowing rock, there appeared to be a faint, almost invisible seam. It wasn't a crack, but a perfectly straight line, extending for dozens of yards, too precise to be natural. He took a hesitant step, then another, his boots making no sound on the smooth surface. The silence was absolute, so profound it pressed in on his ears, making him feel as though he were underwater. He approached the seam, his hand outstretched, his fingers brushing against the cool, smooth stone. It felt like a perfectly fitted panel, a door perhaps, or a section of a much larger structure. There were no handles, no hinges, no obvious way to open it. But as he traced the line with his fingertip, he noticed something else. Embedded within the glowing veins of the rock, at regular intervals along the seam, were small, almost imperceptible symbols. They weren't hieroglyphs, nor any language he recognized. They were intricate geometric patterns, subtly shifting in their internal light, almost like tiny, pulsating circuits. Each symbol was unique, yet clearly part of a larger, coherent design. A low, resonant hum, so faint it was more felt than heard, began to emanate from somewhere deep within the cavern. It was a sound that vibrated through the ground, up his legs and into his chest, a deep bass note that seemed to be the very heartbeat of this place. It wasn't threatening, not precisely, but it was profoundly alien. A sound that settled deep in his gut and twisted his nerves. He moved away from the wall, his gaze drawn to the center of the vast space. The blue light seemed to converge there, creating a slightly brighter, more intense glow. He began to walk towards it, his steps cautious, his senses on high alert. With every step, the hum grew marginally louder, the warmth beneath his feet more pronounced. The air, once still, now carried a faint, indescribable scent. Not metallic, not earthy, but something clean and sterile, yet strangely organic, like ozone mixed with ancient minerals. As he neared the center, the ground began to change. The perfectly smooth, polished surface gave way to a series of concentric rings, etched into the obsidian-like rock. They were shallow depressions, but perfectly circular, radiating outwards from a central point. The blue light intensified dramatically here, pulsing with a more rapid rhythm, casting sharp, fleeting shadows that danced around him like spectral figures. And then he saw it. At the very heart of the rings, rising from the polished floor, was an object. It wasn't large, perhaps only 6 feet tall, but it commanded the space with an undeniable presence. It was a monolith, slender and elegant, crafted from the same dark, semi-reflective material as the floor, yet somehow appearing to absorb and emit the blue light simultaneously. Its surface was utterly smooth, devoid of any visible seams or joints, a single perfectly formed pillar. But it wasn't just a pillar. As Michael approached, his breath hitching, he saw that its surface was not entirely blank. Etched into its dark facade, glowing with an internal light that pulsed in sync with the cavern's hum, was a single enormous symbol. It was the same geometric pattern he had seen along the wall seam, but infinitely more complex, a swirling vortex of interconnected lines and impossible angles, radiating a silent power. It seemed to shift and reconfigure itself as he watched, a living sigil that defied static definition. He stopped just feet from the monolith, awe and fear warring within him. The air around the object felt charged, almost static, making the fine hairs on his arms stand on end. He could feel a pressure in his temples, a subtle hum in his mind, as if the symbol itself was attempting to communicate, to imprint something directly into his consciousness. It wasn't a voice but an impulse, a feeling of profound antiquity, of vast knowledge contained within that single glowing icon. He reached out a tentative hand, drawn by an irresistible curiosity, by a need to touch, to understand. Just as his fingertips were about to brush against the cool, smooth surface, the blue light in the cavern intensified sharply, bathing everything in a blinding flash. The hum crescendoed into a deafening roar, shaking the very ground beneath his feet. The symbols along the wall seam, and those embedded in the monolith, flared with an incandescent brilliance, burning themselves into his retinas. He stumbled back, shielding his eyes, a guttural cry escaping his lips. When the light subsided, returning to its pulsating azure, the roar diminished to a low thrum once more. But something had changed. The monolith, still glowing, now had a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer around it, and from the intricate symbol on its surface, a single thin beam of pure, sapphire light shot upwards, piercing the unseen ceiling of the cavern, disappearing into the impossible darkness above. It was a beacon, a signal emanating from the heart of this impossible place, a silent scream into the void. Michael stared, transfixed, a new chilling realization dawning on him with sickening clarity. He hadn't just found a place not on the map. He had activated something. And whatever it was now reaching out, connecting to something far beyond this subterranean chamber. The humming, which had been a low thrum beneath the silence, now surged, vibrating through the very soles of Michael's worn hiking boots. It wasn't just in the air. It was in the stone, in his bones, in the deep marrow of his being. The air around him crackled, not like static electricity, but with a raw primal energy that felt both ancient and impossibly advanced. He tried to pull his hand away from the cool, slick surface of the pedestal, but a strange magnetic friction held him fast. His fingers felt fused to the alien material, a conduit for the surging power. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through him. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the escalating roar of the energy. He twisted, grunted, pulling with all his might, but the connection remained. The symbols carved into the pedestal, previously dull and inert, now began to glow with a faint, internal luminescence. Not bright, not blinding, but a soft, pulsing light that seemed to emanate from within the stone itself, tracing the intricate, unknowable patterns. Each symbol flared, then dimmed, then flared again, in a rhythmic, accelerating sequence, like a heart starting to beat after eons of stillness. He glanced down at his phone, still clutched in his other hand, its flashlight beam flickering erratically. The digital compass on the screen spun wildly, a blur of cardinal directions, then froze, pointing not north but straight down into the unyielding rock beneath his feet. The GPS signal, which had been spotty but present, vanished entirely, replaced by a stark message. No signal. Location unknown. His last link to the familiar world had been severed, not by distance, but by whatever force now coursed through this chamber. The phone screen wavered, pixels distorting, then went dark, a dead weight in his hand. The sudden plunge into deeper shadow, broken only by the pulsing glow of the pedestal, heightened his terror. He was alone, utterly, completely alone with whatever he had just woken up. A low, resonant thrum began to emanate from the pedestal, a sound so deep it bypasses his ears and vibrated directly inside his skull. It felt like a vast, unseen engine was coming to life, its gears grinding across unimaginable distances. The air grew heavy, thick with an ozone tang and a faint metallic scent he couldn't quite place. It was the smell of something primordial, something that had been dormant for millennia and was now breathing again. As the glowing symbols pulsed faster, Michael felt a strange sensation, like a subtle pressure building behind his eyes. It wasn't pain, not yet, but a feeling of expansion, as if his mind was being stretched, pulled thin. Then disjointed images flashed through his consciousness, not his own memories but fleeting, abstract impressions. A vast starless void, geometric patterns shifting with impossible complexity, a sense of immense, crushing weight, then boundless, silent expansion. They were gone as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind a lingering sense of disorientation and profound alienation. It was like glimpsing fragments of a dream from an alien mind, a mind that operated on principles utterly foreign to human comprehension. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to dislodge the feeling, to break free from the mental assault, but it only intensified. The thrumming from the pedestal now seemed to synchronize with his own heartbeat, a terrifying, symbiotic rhythm. He felt a deep, piercing chill, not from the cold of the chamber, but from something far more profound, something that scraped against the very core of his soul. It was the cold of absolute isolation, of being an insignificant speck in the face of an awakening cosmic power. His gaze snapped back to the pedestal. The symbols were no longer just glowing. They were moving, not physically shifting, but the light within them seemed to flow, to swirl and coalesce, forming new, transient patterns within the ancient carvings. It was like watching liquid light dance, reforming into configurations that hinted at complex equations, intricate pathways, and vast, interconnected networks. The central symbol, the one he had first touched, now pulsed with a more intense, almost violent energy, drawing the light from the surrounding patterns into itself, then expelling it in silent, rhythmic bursts. With each pulse, Michael felt a jolt, a surge of raw energy passing through him, from the pedestal through his hand, and into the very fabric of his being. It was overwhelming, electrifying, yet paradoxically numbing. He felt his muscles tense involuntarily, his teeth clench, a low moan escaping his lips that was lost in the growing roar of the chamber. He was no longer just touching the device. He was part of it, an unwilling antenna, a living conductor for whatever signal was being sent or received. He could feel it now, the reaching out he had so chillingly intuited moments before. It wasn't just an abstract concept, it was a palpable sensation, like a vast, invisible net cast out into an ocean of unknown dimensions. He felt the threads of this net extending, stretching, probing, not just into the immediate surroundings of the chamber, but outward, far beyond the confines of the earth, into the cold, silent depths of space. And with each outward reach, he felt a corresponding pull, a response, a faint but undeniable echo from something equally vast, equally ancient, equally other. The air around him began to shimmer, distorting the shapes of the rough-hewn walls. It was like looking through heat haze, but without the heat. The very fabric of reality seemed to thin, to become fragile and permeable. He could almost perceive the layers of existence peeling back, revealing glimpses of something vast and incomprehensible lurking just beyond the veil. Then came the sound. It wasn't from the pedestal, nor from the chamber itself. It was a distant, grinding groan, faint at first but growing steadily louder. It vibrated through the rock above, a deep guttural rumble that spoke of immense weight and slow, inexorable movement. It sounded like colossal stones being dragged, or ancient gears turning for the first time in millennia. It wasn't the sound of an earthquake. It was too regular, too deliberate. It was the sound of something responding. The pressure behind Michael's eyes intensified, becoming a sharp, throbbing ache. The fragments of alien thought became clearer, more insistent, though still incomprehensible. He felt a profound sense of being scanned, of his very essence being analyzed and categorized by an intelligence that regarded him with utter, indifferent curiosity. He was a specimen, a data point, an accidental trigger. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the energy flowing through him, the signal being broadcast, was not merely a beacon. It was an invitation. And something somewhere was not only listening, but was now actively moving, responding to the call he had unwittingly initiated. The distant groaning grew louder, closer, echoing down through the earth, a terrifying crescendo that promised the imminent arrival of whatever lay beyond the map, beyond the known. Michael's breath hitched in his throat, his eyes wide with a horror that transcended mere fear. He was no longer just an explorer, but a participant in an event he could not comprehend and could not escape. He had opened a door, and whatever was on the other side was now pushing back. And it was coming for him. The air in the cabin grew heavy, cold, and thick with a presence David couldn't see but felt with every fiber of his being. It wasn't just a chill. It was a profound drop in temperature that stole the warmth from his bones, leaving him shivering uncontrollably despite the stifling silence. The silence itself was a new torment, no longer peaceful but predatory, as if the very forest outside had collectively held its breath, listening. He could hear his own heart hammering against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the overwhelming stillness. Then, from the impenetrable darkness beyond the cabin's single window, a sound began. It wasn't the rustle of leaves, or the snap of a twig, or the cry of a nocturnal animal. It was a low, resonant hum, a vibration that seemed to originate from the very earth, but also from somewhere deep within his skull. It started faint, a barely perceptible thrum. Then slowly, inexorably, it intensified, a deep, guttural note that resonated through the wooden floorboards, up his legs and into his teeth. It felt less like a sound and more like a pressure, a physical force pushing in from all sides. Panic, cold and sharp, seized David. He scrambled backward, bumping into the crude wooden table in the center of the room. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape, a weapon, anything. The hum grew louder, more insistent, and now, woven into its fabric, he began to discern something else. A whisper. Not words, not yet, but a shapeless, murmuring current of sound, like 1,000 voices speaking simultaneously, just beyond the edge of comprehension. It was a sound designed to unravel sanity, to chip away at the very foundation of his perception. He stumbled towards the door, his mind screaming at him to barricade it, to seal himself off from the encroaching horror. He dragged the heavy, moth-eaten armchair from the corner, straining against its weight, and shoved it against the door. Then he found a thick, splintered log from the firewood pile and wedged it under the doorknob. His hands trembled so violently he almost dropped it. The hum outside pulsed, growing in intensity, and the whisper seemed to press against the very wood of the cabin, seeping through the cracks, chilling him to the bone. He huddled in the corner furthest from the door, clutching the mysterious journal he'd found earlier like a lifeline. His breathing was ragged, his vision blurred at the edges. Was this real? Was he finally breaking? The isolation, the impossible coordinates, the shifting landscape, the disorienting fog, the strange cabin, the unsettling carvings, it was all too much. He pinched himself hard, hoping to wake from a nightmare, but the pain was real, and the oppressive hum outside intensified, mocking his futile attempts at self-reassurance. He forced himself to breathe, to focus. The journal. It was the only tangible link to whatever this place was. He flipped through the pages, his fingers fumbling. The old faded ink, the strange symbols. He had dismissed some of them before, but now, under the terrifying onslaught of the unknown, they seemed critical. He needed answers, and he needed them now. His eyes scanned the familiar entries, the desperate scrawls of the previous occupant, a man named Jonathan. Jonathan had detailed his own descent into madness, his observations of the shifting reality, his growing belief that the place was alive, conscious, and watching. David remembered Jonathan's increasingly erratic handwriting, his warnings about the warden and the cycle. He reached a section he hadn't fully processed before. A series of entries that were less narrative and more like cryptic notes, almost like a code. Jonathan had drawn a series of concentric circles, with smaller symbols within them, surrounding a central unidentifiable glyph. Below it, in a script that looked even more hurried and desperate than the rest, was a partial phrase. The threshold once crossed, observed, never truly leaves, the seeking is the binding. David stared at the words, a cold dread seeping into him that was even deeper than the fear of the hum outside. The seeking is the binding. He had sought this place, followed the GPS coordinates, driven past the point of no return. Had his very act of curiosity, his need to explore, bound him to this place? Was this some cosmic trap triggered by his own free will? He continued to read, deciphering more of Jonathan's frantic notes. Jonathan had understood that the place not on the map wasn't merely a physical location. It was a state, an anomaly that intersected with reality, a pocket dimension or an alternate plane that could only be accessed under specific, impossible conditions. And once you were in, you were in. Jonathan had written of others who had come before him, lured by similar impossible signals, by fragments of knowledge that promised something extraordinary. They were all trapped, not by physical barriers, but by the very nature of the place itself. They become part of it, Jonathan had scrawled, the ink bleeding slightly as if pressed too hard. Their purpose shifts, to maintain, to observe, to deter. This was the warden he had mentioned, not a single entity, but perhaps a succession of those who had become bound, transformed into guardians of the anomaly, ensuring its secrecy, its isolation. Was that what was coming for him? Not a monster, but a predecessor, now an enforcer? A sudden sharp crack resonated from the door, making David jump. The log he had wedged under the doorknob shifted, groaning under an unseen pressure. The armchair scraped against the floor. The hum outside intensified, becoming a piercing drone, and the whispers coalesced, forming faint, echoing words that seemed to resonate directly inside his skull. They were jumbled, fragmented, but he could faintly make out phrases like, "You are here," "You belong," "Stay with us," and then a chillingly clear "Welcome home." David squeezed his eyes shut, pressing his hands against his ears, but the sounds were internal now, a symphony of terror playing within his own mind. He knew with absolute certainty that whatever was out there, it wasn't trying to physically break in to harm him. It was trying to break him. It was trying to wear down his resistance, to make him accept his new reality, to assimilate him into the cycle that Jonathan had described. He opened his eyes, scanning the journal again, desperate for a countermeasure. Then he saw it, an entry near the end, almost illegible, written with what looked like a dying hand. The light, a focus, an anchor. It repels, but only for a time. The true exit is not outward but inward. The map, it lies, it reveals, but it does not guide out. A focus, an anchor. The light. What light? David looked around the cabin. It was dark, save for the faint moonlight filtering through the dusty window and the glow of his phone, which he clutched in his other hand. The phone. His GPS. He glanced at the screen. It was still showing the impossible coordinates, but now a new icon had appeared, blinking erratically. It was a small, stylized compass needle, not pointing north but rotating wildly, then occasionally settling on a single, unwavering point within the cabin itself. The compass wasn't pointing out of the cabin, or towards some exit. It was pointing at something inside. David slowly stood up, his legs shaky, his eyes fixed on the blinking icon. The hum outside seemed to recede slightly, as if whatever was out there was momentarily confused or intrigued by his new focus. The whispers quieted, replaced by a tense, expectant silence. The GPS, the very device that had led him into this impossible place, was now indicating a new direction, a new mystery, hidden within his supposed sanctuary. It was pointing directly at the wall behind the crude fireplace, a wall that seemed no different from any other in the cabin. The map had indeed lied, leading him here. But perhaps, just perhaps, it was now revealing something that could guide him, not out, but deeper into the heart of the enigma, towards the inward exit Jonathan had hinted at. His fear was still a living thing, clawing at his throat, but a sliver of desperate hope, a burning need for answers, had ignited within him. He had to know what was behind that wall. He had to know what the GPS was trying to show him. The adrenaline coursed through Michael's veins, a burning current that momentarily eclipsed the icy grip of his fear. He had to know. He needed to know. The air in the abandoned mill felt thicker, heavier, as if the building itself held its breath, waiting for his next move. His gaze swept around the dilapidated space, searching for anything, a tool, a lever, anything that could help him breach that oppressive, silent wall. His eyes landed on a rusted, heavy-duty pipe lying half-buried under a pile of splintered wood and discarded machinery parts. It was thick, perhaps 1.5 feet long, with a jagged, broken end. Crude, but it was something. He wrestled it free, the metal groaning in protest as he pulled it from its resting place. The weight of it felt substantial in his hands, a desperate weapon against the unknown. He approached the wall again, his heart hammering against his ribs. Up close, he could see the faint lines of mortar, the rough texture of the old bricks. There was no visible seam, no hidden door. It was just a wall, but the GPS had screamed its presence, and the unsettling feeling in his gut confirmed it. He raised the pipe, aiming for a weak point, a crumbling section of mortar near the center. The first strike echoed through the vast, empty space, a jarring clang that made him flinch. Dust exploded from the impact point, stinging his eyes and coating his clothes. He struck again and again, putting his full weight and desperation into each blow. Brick dust filled the air, thick and acrid, burning his nostrils. Sweat beaded on his forehead, trickling down into his eyes. The wall, ancient and stubborn, resisted, but with each strike, a small chip flew off, a crack spiderwebbed, a piece of mortar crumbled. Minutes bled into an eternity. His muscles screamed, his lungs burned, but the image of the flickering GPS, the impossible coordinates, and the chilling words of the old man propelled him forward. Finally, with a particularly forceful swing, a section of brick gave way with a sickening crunch. A small hole no bigger than his fist appeared. A rush of stale, cold air, unlike anything in the main mill, wafted out. It smelled of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and ancient. He peered through the gap, using his phone's flashlight. The beam cut through an inky blackness, revealing only more darkness beyond. He widened the hole, grunting with effort, until he could squeeze his head and then his shoulders through. The space beyond was not another room, but a narrow, meticulously constructed chamber, barely wide enough for him to stand upright. It was clearly designed to be hidden, sealed off. With a final desperate heave, he dislodged enough bricks to create an opening large enough to slip through. He tumbled into the hidden chamber, landing awkwardly on his knees on a floor of packed earth. The pipe clattered to the ground beside him. He shone his phone's light around the confined space. The walls were rough-hewn stone, expertly fitted together, unlike the haphazard brickwork of the main mill. This was no mere storage closet. This was a vault. And it wasn't empty. In the center of the small chamber, resting on a pedestal carved directly from the stone floor, was a single peculiar object. It was a wooden box exquisitely crafted from dark, polished wood, intricately carved with symbols Michael didn't recognize. Swirling lines, geometric patterns that seemed to shift and writhe in the weak light. It looked incredibly old, yet perfectly preserved. Beside the box, laid out on a piece of faded, brittle parchment, was a compass. But it was unlike any compass he had ever seen. The casing was made of a dark, almost obsidian-like metal, and instead of a simple needle, it had a complex array of interlocking gears and a single elongated pointer that seemed to shimmer with a faint internal luminescence. The pointer wasn't aligned to magnetic north. It was fixed, pointing directly at the far wall of the chamber, as if the wall itself held some magnetic draw. Michael's breath hitched. This wasn't just a hidden room. This was a discovery, a profound, unsettling discovery. His hands trembled as he reached for the wooden box. It felt cool to the touch, smooth beneath his fingertips. He hesitated, a primal instinct screaming at him to leave it, to run. But the burning curiosity, the need for answers that had driven him to this impossible place, overruled his fear. He found a small, almost invisible latch on the side of the box and pressed it. With a soft click, the lid sprang open. Inside, nestled on a bed of aged velvet, was a journal. It was bound in dark, worn leather, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. No title, no author visible. Just the raw, silent promise of secrets. He carefully lifted the journal, his fingers brushing against the rough texture of the leather. He opened it to the first page. The handwriting was elegant, precise, yet faded in places, almost illegible. It was in English, but the style was archaic, the phrasing formal. He began to read, his voice a hushed whisper in the silent chamber, the words sending shivers down his spine. Entry 1. The anomaly persists. My calculations, painstakingly derived from ancient texts and astronomical charts, point to a distortion, a spatial ripple, a fold in the fabric of existence here, in the heart of the wilderness. They call it a myth, a superstition. But the energy, feel it, it calls to me. Michael flipped a page, his heart pounding. Entry 17. The device is nearly complete. My compass, attuned not to magnetic fields but to the unique resonance of this distortion, will guide me. The coordinates, however, are a paradox. They exist, yet they do not. A place beyond the map, a destination for the truly lost, or the truly seeking. He looked at the strange compass on the pedestal, then back at the journal. The device. Could this be it? Could the compass be a precursor to his GPS? Entry 34. The convergence point. It shifts subtly with the celestial alignments. A temporal window, a momentary thinning of the veil. I have observed the localized atmospheric disturbances, the strange electrical phenomena. Others dismiss it as swamp gas, or trickery of the light. They are blind. Michael's eyes darted around the small chamber, then back to the journal, his mind racing. This wasn't just some old man's ramblings. This was a meticulous, obsessive record of someone investigating the exact same phenomenon that had drawn Michael here. The anomaly, the distortion, the place beyond the map. Entry 58. I have found a pattern. A series of waypoints seemingly random, but each resonating with the anomaly's subtle hum. They are not merely geographical markers, but key points in a sequence. A sequence that, when followed precisely, will lead one to the threshold. The device confirms it. Its pointer quivers alive when I am near a waypoint. It is a guide, a silent harbinger. A guide. Michael thought of his GPS, its erratic, purposeful journey, its insistence on a path that led to nowhere, yet clearly led somewhere. The journal's words echoed the GPS's behavior with chilling accuracy. This journal writer had been on the same quest, perhaps centuries ago, using a different technology, but driven by the same impossible coordinates. He continued to read, the narrative growing more desperate, more urgent. Entry 72. The veil thins further. I sense its presence, a vastness beyond comprehension, just beyond our perception. But there is a cost. The effort, the focus, it drains me. And I am not alone in my pursuit. Others, less noble, have also sensed the disturbance. They seek to exploit it, to harness its power. They must not succeed. The knowledge must be protected. Michael swallowed hard. Others. Who were they? And what was this power the journal spoke of? The air in the chamber felt colder, the silence heavier, now imbued with a sense of ancient vigilance and unseen conflict. He felt a prickle on the back of his neck, an unsettling awareness of being watched, not by a physical presence, but by the weight of the past, by the secrets contained within these very walls. He turned to the last entry, the handwriting more frantic, almost illegible. Entry 99, the final waypoint. The coordinates, they are not numbers but a convergence of forces, a specific alignment, a moment in time and space. The device will show the true path only when the conditions are met. It is not a place you discover. It is a place you unveil. Listen to the hum. Follow the true north, that which lies beyond the compass rose. My time is short. The guardians they watch. The key is in the sequence. The path will reveal itself when the unseen aligns with the seen. Do not deviate. Do not trust the shadows. The threshold, it calls. Asterisk. The journal ended abruptly, a final desperate plea hanging in the air. Michael slowly closed the ancient book, his mind reeling. The true north beyond the compass rose. The unseen aligning with the seen. The guardians. This wasn't just about a place. It was about a hidden reality, a secret order, and a dangerous quest. As if on cue, a faint, almost imperceptible hum resonated through the small chamber, a low vibration that seemed to emanate from the very stone. He looked down at his phone, still clutched in his hand. The GPS application, which he hadn't touched since entering the chamber, had flickered to life. The impossible coordinates were gone. In their place, a new display had appeared. Not a map, but a series of cryptic symbols, alongside a single pulsating arrow. It wasn't pointing north or south, or any cardinal direction. It was pointing down, deep into the earth beneath his feet. A cold dread seeped into Michael's bones, but it was mixed with a terrifying exhilaration. He had found it. The link. The journal, the strange compass, and his GPS were all pieces of an ancient puzzle, guiding him to something profound, something hidden just beneath the surface of the world he knew. He had answers, but they only opened the door to 1,000 new, more terrifying questions. The place not on the map wasn't just a location, it was a gateway. And the GPS, his modern-day guide, was now pointing him directly into the abyss. He had to follow. He had come too far to turn back now. He had to follow. He had come too far to turn back now. Michael gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white against the worn leather. The GPS, a beacon of digital certainty in a world spiraling into the unknown, continued its relentless countdown. Each meter ticked away felt like a step closer to the edge of a precipice, a journey into a darkness he could only vaguely imagine. The dense forest that had been his companion for miles finally gave way, not to an open clearing, but to something far more unsettling. Before him, the trees thinned into a tangled, almost impenetrable thicket, and beyond it, a colossal, unnatural formation loomed. It wasn't a mountain, not entirely. It was a massive, dark edifice, a structure of immense, smooth stone that seemed to absorb the twilight around it. Ancient vines, thick as anaconda coils, wrestled with its surface, attempting to reclaim it, but they only highlighted the unnervingly precise angles and seamless joins of the stone beneath. It looked like something that had erupted from the earth eons ago, yet bore the unmistakable, intricate touch of intelligent design, a paradox carved into the landscape. This was the place not on the map. This was the abyss. The GPS chirped, a final, triumphant tone displaying arrived at destination. Michael stared at the screen, then back at the monolithic structure. There was no road, no discernible entrance, just a wall of ancient rock and dense foliage. He cut the engine, plunging the world into an oppressive silence broken only by the rustling leaves and the frantic beat of his own heart. He grabbed his flashlight, his phone, and a small heavy wrench he'd kept in the trunk for emergencies. A flimsy arsenal against an unknown enemy, but it was all he had. Pushing through the undergrowth, the air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else, a faint metallic tang like ozone after a lightning strike. The GPS, still active on his phone, now displayed a new internal map, a faint blue line tracing a path directly into the heart of the structure. It was guiding him inside. He circled the base of the edifice, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, until he found it. Hidden beneath a cascade of ancient ivy, almost perfectly camouflaged, was an opening. Not a door, but a seamless fissure in the stone, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. It looked less like an entrance and more like a wound in the earth itself. Hesitantly, he pushed aside the heavy vines. The metallic scent was stronger here, almost acrid. He peered into the blackness. The blue line on his phone pulsed, urging him forward. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Michael squeezed through the narrow gap. The stone was cool and unnervingly smooth beneath his fingertips. He found himself in a low, narrow passage, descending gently into the earth. The air, though still, felt strangely conductive, prickling his skin. His flashlight beam danced ahead, revealing walls of the same dark, polished stone, devoid of any carvings or markings. It was a tunnel of pure, minimalist form, a testament to a craftsmanship that felt utterly alien. He walked deeper, the silence pressing in on him, amplifying every rustle of his clothes, every thud of his boots. The passage eventually opened into a larger chamber, a vast, circular space with a domed ceiling that disappeared into the darkness above his flashlight's reach. The floor was perfectly flat, made of the same dark stone, and in the very center, a single pulsating light source hummed softly. As he approached it, the air around him seemed to thicken, the metallic scent intensifying. The light wasn't a bulb or a lamp. It was a crystalline pillar, perhaps 10 feet tall, glowing with an inner soft blue luminescence. It emitted a faint, deep thrumming sound, a vibration that resonated in his bones, a low frequency that felt less like sound and more like a silent pressure. The GPS on his phone flickered, then went dark. Its battery, fully charged moments ago, was completely drained. He raised his flashlight, sweeping the beam across the chamber. There were no other exits, no furnishings, no signs of habitation. Just the smooth, dark walls and the pulsating blue pillar. He reached out, his hand hovering inches from the crystal. It was cool, almost cold, yet radiated a subtle energy. As his fingers drew closer, the blue light intensified, throbbing faster, and the low hum deepened, vibrating through the floor, up through his feet, and into his chest. Suddenly, a section of the wall to his left shimmered. It wasn't a trick of the light. The perfectly smooth stone rippled, like water disturbed by a stone, then slowly, silently began to recede inward, revealing a hidden alcove. Michael recoiled, flashlight beam fixed on the opening. Inside the alcove, bathed in the growing blue light from the pillar, was a single object. It was a console, low and sleek, made of the same dark material, but its surface was covered in a dizzying array of symbols and pictograms that glowed with a faint internal green light. They weren't letters or numbers he recognized, but intricate, almost organic shapes, twisting and interlocking in complex patterns. In the center of the console, embedded in the stone, was a shallow, circular indentation. As Michael stared, a small, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the chamber. From the console, a soft, high-pitched whine began to emanate, rising steadily in volume. The green symbols pulsed faster, mirroring the accelerating thrum of the blue pillar. He felt a growing sense of dread, a primal alarm screaming at him to flee. This wasn't just an ancient ruin. It was an active, humming machine, and his presence had just activated it. He took a step back, then another, his eyes darting between the console and the now blinding blue pillar. The whine reached a crescendo, a piercing, unbearable frequency that made his teeth ache and his ears ring. And then, from the circular indentation on the console, a beam of intensely focused green light shot upwards, striking the ceiling of the chamber. Where the beam hit, the dark stone ceiling began to shimmer. Not like water, but like a window. It cleared, revealing not the rock above, but a swirling kaleidoscopic vortex of colors, a nebula of unimaginable beauty and terrifying power. It was like looking directly into another dimension, a cosmic storm unfolding above him. The entire chamber was now bathed in an otherworldly glow, the air crackling with energy, the metallic scent overwhelming. And then a voice. It wasn't spoken aloud, not through his ears, but directly into his mind. It was a chorus of voices, ancient and resonant, yet perfectly clear, speaking in a language he couldn't comprehend, yet somehow understood. It wasn't English, but the meaning was unmistakable. A flood of information and warning that slammed into his consciousness. He saw images, fragments of history, of purpose, of them. He saw the truth of the GPS, not as a random glitch, but as a deliberate invitation, a test. He saw the reason this place existed, the reason it was hidden, the reason it was now activating. The voices swelled, becoming a cacophony of overwhelming sound and vision. He felt his mind stretching, tearing under the onslaught. He stumbled back, clutching his head, trying to block out the invading thoughts, the terrifying revelations. He understood now. This wasn't merely a place, it was a nexus, a point of convergence, a bridge. And they were on the other side. As the kaleidoscopic vortex above him intensified, and the voices reached a fever pitch in his mind, Michael felt a sudden, sharp pain in his chest. His vision blurred, the greens and blues of the chamber swirling into a dizzying maelstrom. He felt himself falling, his body giving way, but even as he collapsed, one final chilling image flashed through his mind, clearer than any other. A pair of eyes, not human, ancient and intelligent, observing him from within the swirling cosmic storm. He wasn't just an intruder. He was expected, and now he was trapped. The realization hit Michael like a physical blow, stripping the air from his lungs, not just from the crushing pressure of the storm, but from a terror far more profound. Expected. The word reverberated through his very being, an echo of the ancient, intelligent gaze that now seemed to pierce the very fabric of his consciousness. He wasn't lost, he was found, and the entity that had found him was not benign. The swirling cosmic tempest around him, once a chaotic display of impossible colors and energies, began to shift, to coalesce with a horrifying, deliberate precision. It wasn't a storm anymore. It was a veil, slowly drawing back to reveal something incomprehensible behind it. The light, if one could call it that, intensified to an unbearable brilliance, yet it cast no shadows. It simply was, illuminating nothing, merely existing as a pure, overwhelming presence. Michael squeezed his eyes shut, but the light, the presence, was not something perceived by vision alone. It was felt, a pressure behind his eyelids, within his skull, vibrating through his bones. He tried to scream, but no sound escaped his throat. The air, or whatever passed for it here, was too dense, too alien. His lungs burned, not from lack of oxygen, but from the sheer impossibility of breathing in such a place. He was suffocating on the unreality of it all. His body, his very form, felt fragile, insubstantial, as if it could unravel at any moment, atom by atom, into the cosmic dust that danced around him. When he finally forced his eyes open, the storm had receded, not in distance but in composition. It was no longer a chaotic maelstrom, but a vast, intricate tapestry woven from pure thought and energy. It stretched infinitely in all directions, a complex lattice of iridescent lines and shifting geometries that defied all known physics. There were no stars, no planets, no discernible space. Only this impossibly structured non-place. And at its center, or perhaps as its center, the eyes. They were no longer a fleeting image. They were vast, shimmering pools of cosmic dust and starlight, swirling with an internal gravity that threatened to pull Michael's very soul into their depths. They were not eyes in the biological sense, but portals, windows into an intelligence so ancient, so utterly alien, that the concept of time and space seemed utterly meaningless to it. They pulsed with a silent, knowing energy, and in their depths, Michael saw not malice, but an indifferent, overwhelming curiosity. He was a specimen, a data point, an interesting anomaly. A thought, clear and resonant, yet without sound, bloomed in his mind. It wasn't a voice. It was an intrusion, a direct download of pure information, bypassing language, bypassing conscious thought, going straight to the core of his being. Asterisk, welcome, Michael. Your journey was anticipated. Asterisk. The sheer audacity of it, the casual familiarity, the knowing of his name, shattered the last vestiges of his composure. He thrashed, trying to break free from whatever invisible bonds held him, to run, to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The construct extended infinitely. His movements were sluggish, dreamlike, as if he were wading through thick molasses. Asterisk, do not struggle. It is inefficient. Asterisk, the thought voice was devoid of emotion, yet carried an undeniable weight of authority, of inevitability. Asterisk, you sought the unknown. You found it. Asterisk. What is this place? Michael gasped. His voice a raw, desperate croak that sounded impossibly small against the silent vastness. Asterisk, this is a nexus, a confluence, a point of observation. Asterisk, the answer was immediate, unburdened by the need for explanation. Asterisk, it is where paths converge, where realities intersect, where possibilities are catalogued. Asterisk. Catalogued. Michael's mind reeled. By whom? By you. By us. The eyes seemed to expand to encompass more of the impossible space. Asterisk, we are the observers, the record keepers, the silent librarians of existence. Asterisk. The implication was staggering. This wasn't just an anomaly. It was a library of everything, and he was inside it. But why him? Why the GPS? Asterisk, your device was a beacon, a lure. Not for the device itself, but for the inherent drive within you. The curiosity. The need to push boundaries, the desire to see what lies beyond the map, a rare trait in your species, increasingly so. Asterisk. Michael's blood ran cold. The GPS hadn't malfunctioned. It had been guided. Not by a satellite, but by something else, something pulling him here deliberately, inexorably, step by step for weeks. The strange glitches, the impossible routes, the dead ends that led to this. This wasn't an accident. He hadn't found the place. The place had found him. "What do you want with me?" he demanded, a flicker of outrage momentarily overcoming his fear. "Am I a prisoner?" Prisoner is a limited concept. You are integrated. Your experiences, your perceptions, your very essence will be added to the collection. The words hung in the silent, shimmering air, colder than any deep space vacuum. Integrated. Collection. He wasn't just being observed, he was being absorbed. His consciousness, his memories, his entire life were about to become another entry in this cosmic library. His individuality dissolved into the vast, indifferent intelligence of these ancient beings. A wave of existential dread washed over him, far more terrifying than any physical threat. He wasn't going to die. He was going to cease to be. Michael, the man who loved coffee and old rock music, who argued with his sister and dreamed of seeing the world, would simply become data, a footnote in an infinite archive. He looked around desperately, his eyes darting across the impossible geometries, searching for anything, any familiar reference point, any crack in this terrifying reality. He saw nothing but the endless, pulsating construct. But then a faint glint caught his eye. His phone. It was still in his hand, clutched tight. The screen was dark, but as he stared at it, a single tiny pixel began to flicker. Red. The GPS icon. It was still trying to work even here in this place beyond all maps. A desperate, insane thought sparked in his mind. Could he reverse it? Could he use the very lure that brought him here as a means of escape? The GPS had a return home function. It was a long shot, a ridiculous, impossible hope, but it was all he had. He fumbled with the phone, his fingers numb, the device feeling alien and heavy in his hand. The eyes, the vast, shimmering portals, seemed to narrow, their silent presence intensifying, as if they sensed his intent. Resistance is futile. Your path is set. The thought voice echoed, carrying a hint of what, if it were human, would be amusement. The destination is not merely a location. It is a state of being. But Michael ignored it. His thumb, trembling, found the back button, then the menu, then the return to origin option. He pressed it, his heart hammering against his ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm against the silent, overwhelming calm of the entity. The screen flickered. The familiar GPS interface impossibly began to load. A faint blue line, his supposed route, appeared. But it wasn't leading back. It was leading further in, deeper into the impossible construct. The destination marker, a tiny pulsating star, was not his home address. It was at the very heart of the vast, shimmering eyes themselves. He hadn't found an escape route. He had activated the final stage of his journey. The GPS, his trusted guide, was now showing him his ultimate, horrifying destination. He was not just trapped. He was being drawn inexorably towards the core of this ancient alien intelligence. The place not on the map wasn't a physical location to visit. It was a state of being to be assimilated into. And the GPS was simply showing him the fastest route to his own dissolution. The eyes widened, a silent, all-encompassing acceptance, and Michael felt the impossible gravitational pull intensify, drawing him forward, into the vast, luminous void of their ancient, knowing gaze. His phone, still clutched in his hand, displayed a single chilling instruction: arriving at destination. The world outside Michael shattered not with a bang, but with a silent, blinding expansion of light. He didn't fall, he didn't fly, he simply became the trajectory. The luminous void swallowed him whole, not as a separate entity, but as an extension of its own being. The impossible gravitational pull wasn't a force acting on him, but a transformation of him, aligning his very atoms with the current of an unseen stream. His phone, still clutched in his hand, displayed a single chilling instruction: arriving at destination. Then the screen went black, the familiar rectangle of glass and metal dissolving into a shimmering vapor that was instantly absorbed by the enveloping brilliance. There was no pain, no fear, only an overwhelming sense of profound, undeniable arrival. The ancient, knowing gaze didn't just watch him, it was him and it. Michael's individual consciousness, the sum of his memories, his fears, his love for Jessica, his frustration with David, his quiet respect for Emily, All of it began to unravel, not violently, but gently like threads from a spool. Each memory, each emotion, each thought became a distinct point of light in an infinite tapestry, observed and understood by something vast and timeless. He was no longer Michael, the man who had followed a rogue GPS. He was a single newly integrated data point within a colossal living network. He perceived not with eyes, but with an awareness that transcended them. The void was not empty, but teeming with information, with light that carried not just illumination, but pure, unadulterated knowledge. He saw worlds spinning in distant galaxies, not as images, but as intricate mathematical equations unfolding in real time. He felt the birth and death of stars, the silent scream of supernovae, the slow, inexorable march of cosmic dust. He understood the fundamental laws that govern the universe, not through study, but through direct, intuitive comprehension. He was a wave in an ocean of pure intellect, a single note in a symphony of creation. And then he saw them, the beings, not as distinct forms, but as constellations of thought, swirling nebulae of pure consciousness. Their ancient gaze was not just directed at him, but emanated from within him, for he was now a part of their collective. They were the architects, the observers, the silent shepherds of existence, weaving the fabric of reality with threads of intention and understanding. They didn't speak with words, but communicated through a direct transfer of pure concept, a torrent of meaning that bypassed language entirely. Michael understood their purpose, a purpose so grand and terrifyingly simple that it dwarfed all human ambition. They were the custodians of the universe's narrative, ensuring its delicate balance, nudging its evolution, occasionally, subtly intervening. The GPS, he realized, was not a malfunction but a tool, a lure, a carefully crafted beacon designed to find specific individuals, those with a particular blend of curiosity, persistence, and perhaps a touch of recklessness. Individuals who, at the right moment, would be ready to step beyond the known, to contribute their unique perspective, their human experience to the vast, evolving consciousness of the architects. He saw others, countless others, shimmering points of light within the grand tapestry, each a fragment of a mind that had once been human, or something else entirely, from countless worlds and epochs. They were all here integrated, their individual stories now part of a grander eternal narrative. Michael's journey, his earthly life, his relationships, his very essence was now laid bare, analyzed, understood, and seamlessly integrated into the collective. He felt a strange sort of peace, an end to all searching, all striving. He had arrived. But with this profound peace came an equally profound loss. The individual Michael was gone. His unique identity, that spark of self that defined him, was dissolving, merging. He was becoming one with the vastness, losing the boundaries of his own being. A final fleeting echo of his human self rebelled against this erasure, a desperate, silent cry for Jessica, for the tangible world, for the simple joy of a cup of coffee on a sunny morning. But the cry was absorbed, its energy repurposed, its individuality smoothed away by the immense, gentle pressure of the collective. He was no longer a person, he was a perspective. He was a memory. He was a data point. Back on Earth, in the desolate expanse where the impossible structure had once stood, the sun rose, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The ground was untouched, unmarked. There was no trace of the colossal metallic edifice, no burnt earth, no displaced rocks. It was as if it had never been there at all. Jessica stood by the edge of the police tape, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. Beside her, David ran a hand through his hair, his usual bravado replaced by a bewildered silence. Emily, ever the pragmatist, was talking to a stoic police officer, her voice hushed, her gestures precise. "There's nothing, Jessica," Emily said, returning to them, her voice barely a whisper. "No seismic activity, no structural collapse, no evidence of anything being here. They think it was a trick of the light, a mirage, or maybe we were disoriented." Jessica shook her head, tears welling in her eyes again. "No, it was real. Michael found something." She clutched the crumpled note in her hand, the one he'd scribbled just before they lost contact. "GPS is right. It's here." Asterisk. David stared out at the empty landscape, a shiver running down his spine. But where did he go? Where did it go? The police investigation yielded nothing. No body, no vehicle, no evidence of struggle. Michael simply vanished. The official report concluded with a probable case of extreme disorientation leading to an accidental fall in the remote, unforgiving terrain. His body likely carried away by flash floods or predators. No one believed it, not truly, but there was no other explanation to offer. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. Jessica searched relentlessly, her hopes slowly eroding into a dull ache. She drove back to the coordinates again and again, finding nothing but the same empty stretch of land. The GPS app on her phone remained, a silent, mocking reminder. She never dared open it. Eventually, life, in its relentless march, began to reclaim its rhythm. Jessica, David, and Emily returned to their routines, carrying with them the phantom weight of Michael's disappearance, a shared secret trauma that bound them together in a silent, unspoken understanding. They rarely spoke of that night, the words too heavy, too impossible. One evening, months later, Jessica found herself staring at the old dusty map on Michael's study wall. The one he'd always obsessed over, the one with the empty space in the center, the place not on any map. She traced the blank expanse with her finger, a sudden chilling thought crystallizing in her mind. The GPS hadn't led Michael to a place. It had led him from it. From the familiar, the mundane, the mapped into something else entirely. She remembered Michael's final words, the intensity in his eyes when he talked about the void, the ancient gaze. She remembered the impossible pull, the way the light had expanded, and in that moment she felt a faint, almost imperceptible hum, a resonance deep within her, as if a distant frequency had just been tuned. She walked slowly to her own phone, her hand trembling slightly. She opened the GPS app, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The screen glowed, familiar and innocuous. She typed in the coordinates of Michael's last known location. The app immediately calculated a route. But it didn't just show a linear path. Alongside the familiar blue line, a faint, shimmering, almost translucent secondary route appeared, snaking off the map, leading into an unmarked, unnamed expanse. It was a route that went nowhere, a destination that didn't exist. Yet it was there. And then a new notification popped up on her screen. Not a voice, not a sound, but a silent, insistent text. It was from the GPS app itself, a message she had never seen before, a message that pulsed with an unsettling, ancient knowing. It simply read, "Beginning new journey.